In his eyes there was absolute, I'm not here, I'm not with you. An important information channel is suffering. There must be something in his parent that makes the child to defend himself from. The very first thing that happens after our work, the consciousness is in the eyes, it turns on. After the very first working through, of course I was crying a lot. There is a special knot in our brain which connects the channels of perception, and it is impossible to achieve by medicine, it is impossible to achieve by appliances. All the neurons like a net should gather into one working mechanism. It is done from heart to heart, from one soul to another. I want to sincerely wish all the parents to recover. Hello, Julia. My name is Irina. I would like to talk with you about your son. As long as I know, Bogdan was diagnosed with autism. Has it been medically proven? Yes, just recently in November he was diagnosed with childhood autism. Okay, please tell us a little bit about yourself, a few words about your family, and everything you want to tell about Bogdan. We are 5 in our family. I am my husband Sergey. Bogdan is our eldest son. Then we have a daughter Miloslava, she is 3, and the youngest Damir, 10 months old. What to say about us? We live in Germany. We have met when my husband was already here. I was 12 when we came here. And so we met with my husband, we were attending the same school, and we are still together. Tell us about Bogdan a little bit more detailed. He was born healthy, everything was fine. He was developing normally, he began to sit in time, to walk, everything was going great. His physical development was fine. Then, when he was almost 2, I got pregnant with my second baby, and when Bogdan turned 2, he went to nursery. And there we started having problems. As at nursery, I was told that Bogdan didn't react on speech. I thought maybe it was because of the German language, as he used to listen to Russian language before. But then we began to, so to say, suspect him that he couldn't hear, because nursery teacher was right behind him playing the drum, and he had no reaction on this. Then we went already to the doctor. We went to the specialist, to an ear, nose and throat doctor. The doctor told us that our son was deaf on one ear and he was able to perceive only 40% of sound with his another ear. That was almost a deaf child. A lot of parents don't notice their children's hearing disabilities, which can be either congenital or it might develop after infectious disease. And it seems that the parents understand their children at the family level, they guess what they want, but in fact, an important information channel is suffering. In case of hearing disability, the children's development is affected, psycho-speech development is affected. That's why parents, please pay attention, take your kids to the specialists for examinations. Now hearing screening are accessible from an early age, from birth. There are such centers of early intervention. We made a surgery on an urgent basis, and before he had had a serious flu and his ear had been inflamed. The doctor used to say that fluid was accumulated, but it was not a big deal. So something about 6 months have passed in that moment. That is, for 6 months he was in this state, almost deaf. And we thought that we would have an urgent operation. They would put a tube into his ear and clear everything up. We thought that he would have a surgery and he would start speaking. In 1 month, 2, 3, nothing happened. He was already almost 3, and that was when we began to ring the alarm. What was this about? We were told about autism and these kinds of deviations by our doctor. And we got interested by this topic and we began to discover it. There was a list of bright symptoms which we didn't have except the speech delay. So we didn't give a rush to this. The speech development delay tells us about the psyche development delay. So, dear mothers, please pay attention to this. Give little weight to the idea that the boys under 4 might speak little or begin speaking later. Pay attention to this. Then my husband has found in the internet the rehabilitation centers for children with speech development delay, psycho-speech delay in Russia, in Samara, and we went there right away. We came there and we were diagnosed with psycho-speech delay, and it was still difficult to define autism. We have passed a course of microcurrent reflection therapy, and he has also attended defectologists, speech therapists, and this created such a jump start, so to say. The sounds have appeared. He could pronounce several first letters from the words. And we slightly got used to this and we began to understand each other little by little. But then such a stage began, so to say, that age already passed when he could explain something by his age. That he was behaving like this because he was still little. He didn't totally communicate with other kids. He didn't interact with them at all. And also in the kindergarten, he was always on his own, in his own world. And there was such a moment when he got ill, and in his eyes there was absolute, I'm not here, I'm not with you. There was absolute estranging, and what frightened me was not that he didn't speak. I told my husband, look, he is not with us, he is leaving. There was absolute emptiness within his eyes, and this emptiness was remaining. It seemed that his disease had gone. We did the surgery, but this emptiness, this I'm not here, I'm not with you, this emptiness remained. And this was what hurt me the most, being a mother of a physically healthy child, but not being able to. He just wasn't with us. He was present with us physically, but he wasn't present any other way. And we began to ask ourselves a question: why does he see this world differently? And we have read a lot of books, watched a lot of videos, attended different seminars, and I was looking for something all the time, as well as my stepmother. She always supported us and also read a lot. And once she sent me a video, Julia, have a look. And I was writing the internet and also went across Natalia. She sent me the video, Autism, There is a Way Out. I watched it and I realized that was it, what I had been looking for. I wrote to Natalia at once, contacted her right away, and I got such an answer. Yes, we will check, but there might be such a situation that the child's soul won't agree. And this was really the last hope for me. And if they can't help, how am I going to live on? In September, they made us working through. There was the first consultation, and when we received the video, it was detail for detail the same. We had no doubts, as everything they told us, my husband and I, we felt the same. It was somewhere within us. And after the first working through, his consciousness appeared. I am here. His emptiness, his empty eyes began to disappear. A kind of life interest appeared. If he used to pronounce only syllables before, but for today, it's much now, he pronounces the whole words. He's not talking coherently yet, but he pronounces the whole words. Maybe with the mistakes, but anyway, for example, if I say a sentence, he will be able to repeat slowly, but still. He doesn't talk in sentence yet, but he talks. And what is the most important for me, it's not that important that my child would start talking right after the first consultation, become adequate and become like everyone else. No, for me the most important was to bring his eyes back, to bring back his glance. And now he is a very cheerful child, as he used to be before. He is kind and funny and he's interested in everything. This must be happiness, to realize that your child is not just here physically, but that he is also here with you. We have communication. He understands me, I understand him. I will always be extremely grateful. The very first thing that happens after our work is done, the consciousness in the eyes turns on. What is consciousness? Who is able to explain this today? We understand when we see empty eyes. We feel this. We feel that nobody is there. We feel that there is nobody to remember, nobody to talk, nobody to receive information. And when this sparkle appears in the eyes, this consciousness glance, this is when getting out of autism begins. And it is impossible to achieve by medicine. It is impossible to achieve by appliances. It is done from heart to heart, from one soul to another. How did you feel after your first working through? Do you remember how did Bogdan behave himself? After the first working through, of course I was crying a lot, because everything I was thinking about, you know, when you are thinking about something but you don't tell anyone, and maybe you don't want it to be truth, and then they tell you that it is really so. And meanwhile I felt a relief, because I realized that we were on the right way. And Bogdan, we had such a problem that he didn't sleep at nights. He could fall asleep at 1 a.m. and to wake up already at 4 a.m. And he began to sleep full nights. He began to sleep full nights after the working through. And somehow I felt that he was coming back. It was so, it was seen at once. Sometimes after we have done our work, the child psyche requires some time to work through, and in 2 weeks or a month, his consciousness gets back. There might be a sparkle in the eyes, but the process in psyche is still on, and there is important that the parents don't create any stressful situations, because any stress is able to totally destroy our work. Because any limitation, any harsh shout, you mustn't, don't do, don't go, you're this and that, this all might destroy everything we do, and there will be emptiness. But in this case, we were lucky to have good parents. Tell us, please, how the relationship between Bogdan and his brother and sister has changed. After the working through, we also have a lot of videos. She was already older, and she already had comprehension that he was also a child, and that she should play with him. They began to play and catch, and something that he began to notice her. Before, he used to pass by her without paying any attention. In the kindergarten, he has begun to come up to the kids, to sit with them and to do something together. How has he changed? Maybe his motor skills changed. Maybe he began to draw differently or to play with something. It was also right after the working through was done. We were coming from the kindergarten, and we saw the boys playing football on our playground. And he also didn't care about it because we have a small football field right next to our house, and he never got interested in it. And once we came from the kindergarten, and he said, a ball, laughed and ran to these boys. For me, it was a real shock that he had noticed this and became interested. And now he has such a period that he draws everything that he sees around. He never did this before. He used to draw detail to detail the same, to copy drawings. He did this well, but it wasn't something personal. And now he can watch a cartoon, remember the scenario, and then draw it. It's rather bad, not as good as when he's copying, but this is his own. I also want to mention his reaction. I could say, Bogdan, for example, Bogdan, close the door, please. And I could repeat this for 5 times. I could come up and show how to do this. And now I can tell him to close the door or to turn off the lights, and I might not even look at him. He does it like everybody else. We can observe how in very short terms Bogdan's speech understanding has improved. He became more conscious. He is able to follow difficult instructions. He notices other kids. He interacts with them. His motivation to learn has increased. His imagination is developing. He enjoys to draw. The boy is developing. Come here and blow the candles, my boy. Blow. Oh, well done. Hooray. Before, when I gave him complicated tasks, not just turn off the light, but for example, to take a bottle and put it on the table, this was difficult for him. He couldn't comprehend such speech, wondering, what do you want from me? When they usually work with autistic children, in fact, they simply train them. They divide complicated actions into more simple ones and they train each action. So the child could take care of himself. And in fact, this is an order, a command, which a child obeys. I'm sorry for such comparison, but this is similar to trained animal. When we work with consciousness, the first thing we do, we turn the consciousness on. And the first of all, any complicated action is comprehended. A logic chain is created which sets the movement into action, and child begins to act. He is already able to fulfill complicated tasks. This is already a conscious approach to life. This is totally different. Thus for today, the main task is not to train a child, to stop any trainings, to turn off a commanding tone, short orders, but to build well-bred speech positive, with love. And the child begins to comprehend what he is doing. This is a totally different approach, which is still not common in our society. Now we already watches his younger brother. When, for example, he drops his dummy, Bogdan runs up to him and picks his dummy for him. Or I ask him, Bogdan, please put a bottle on Damir's table. And he does it easily, without a second thought. How does he sleep now? Now, it was almost 3 weeks ago. Something might change within him. He came up to him and said, sleep. And I told him, then go to bed. And I thought that he would just go and continue playing. Then I looked around there, where's Bogdan? He wasn't there. I entered his room and he was in bed sleeping. And since that moment, all these problems have gone. Together with his sister, they go to bed at the same time, wake up in the morning without problems, and go to the kindergarten. And we don't have any more such situation that he is awake and wandering in 2-3 a.m. turning all the lights on. This is the story we used to have for so long. I have a question about his speech and languages. He is bilingual and how it is influencing him. It is better now because he didn't interact on them at all before. And now he is all able to say something. He repeats some German words after the kids in the kindergarten. They admit that he is good at repeating. Because there was nothing like this before, no German speech. He wrote about fungus on his nail. He used to have foot fungus. We were helpless. We have tried everything, any kinds of ointments. It began to spread from his nail to skin, and once together with his dad, they went to spend some time together at the swimming pool, and they returned from the pool. This was already after the working through, and I asked, Seroj, what has happened to his nails? And he asked what? I said they are almost dropped back, and it is almost 1 month after the working through, All his nails went off, and now he has new healthy nails, and his skin is fine, and no fungus has left. You wrote that as a present you gave him a railway model, and he didn't notice it for several years. And then, after some time, he began to play with it. He used to, before meeting Natalia, he used to have only one entertainment. He had different toy animals, and he was playing with them, lined them up, so to say. He replaced them from one place to another, disposed them everywhere. This was his everyday occupation. Now he can watch, for example, Alyosha Popovich, these new cartoons. They last for an hour or an hour and a half. He sits quietly on a couch and watches, and before he used to run back and forth after the music. Now he sits on a couch and watches cartoon, and he laughs when it is supposed. That is, he totally gets the plot. All the child's development during the whole period of this disease is missing. And after our working through, when consciousness is turned on, the process of catching up with this development begins, and the child begins to perceive this world in a new way. Now he begins to play with cars. Before, no matter how many cars were given to him, he never played with them. And now, and it has started just recently, he has found his toys, his cars. He manipulates somehow with them, that is, he plays, consciously plays with them. It is interesting for him now. In the kindergarten, he used to play only with animals, or he could draw for a while. Now he can enter the room, see there are no kids, enter the toy kitchen and pretend that he is pouring some tea into a cup, and then he pretends to be drinking this tea. Or he could lie down and pretend he is snoring as if he is sleeping. Nothing like this had never happened before. We can observe another stage of Bogdan's development. He began to play role games. He enjoys to imitate, to repeat different actions. He watches cartoons with comprehension. He is able to discuss. Were there any symptoms of autism, like usually autistic children have? Some stimming, for example, repeated actions, fixation, something like this. He could run on the road. He didn't see any cars, any traffic ways. I could explain him 100 times that there were cars, and he would laugh and run there again. In the kindergarten, there was always a special nurse looking after him because he could climb somewhere and jump down. He wasn't scared. His sensation of fear was absolutely absent. Now, when we came out of the kindergarten, there is a road right on the way out. I never told him, take him by the hand. I trust him, and I know that he never runs when he doesn't see his mother by him. He can run forwards, but if he doesn't see me, he stops and either waits until I come out of the corner or he walks back. This is such a breakthrough in just a couple of months. Now we come out of the kindergarten without a problem. He doesn't run, he comes up to our car, he knows our car. What about his speech now? How many words can he pronounce? What about the sentences? He knows a lot of words. He speaks clearly. I can't even count them, but he knows a lot of words. Now we work hard to make him speak in sentences. He can come up, for example, and say, drink. I say, no, Bogdan. Say, Mom, give me drink. Mom, give me drink. He repeats, but he doesn't create such sentences by himself. He just says, drink, turn on, open, something like this. Speech processes are the most difficult ones which occur in our brain. A lot of elements are involved here: imagination, fantasy, memory. There is also such a knot in our brain which connects the channels of perception, auditory, visual, and so on. On one hand, it seems that it is very simple to turn on the speech and everybody wants this happen immediately. In fact, this is a very complicated process when all the neurons, like a net, should gather into one working mechanism. And often it takes more than one day of hard work to recover the speech mechanism so a child could start talking, and the parents should also work actively and take an active part in this. And maybe sometimes help of some specialists, a speech therapist for example, is required exactly to make this mechanism work correctly. Are you planning to visit the doctor to cancel your diagnosis? Yes, of course. As a rule, children start attending school at 6 here, but as he was born in July, there is a new law which allows such kids to start at 7. And we will take him to school when he turns 7, and the kindergarten also tells us that they will be able to keep him only till September. And this is again the sign for us that something is needed to be done. So now we are thinking this over. But I told myself that during this year, a year, it is 18 months. It's a huge period of time. And with all this knowledge we have now, after the working through, I'm sure that we will succeed. That these 18 months will be enough for us to completely recover and to enter the ordinary school. Usually we suggest to keep a child away from school for a while, to let him enter the school 1 year later. And this is true not only for autistic children, but also for healthy kids. When the motor skills will be better, the psyche is stronger, then he will be more stress resistant, because school is always a burden. It's always society, collective programs, and if his psyche is still soft, it is more difficult for a child to adjust, and this adjustment period is long-lasting even for a healthy child. And if a child has passed through autism, then of course it is better to send to school later. Then he will be already adjusted, strong, healthy, and besides, he will be prepared a little bit more than enough. Because usually, and this is true, mothers are very good teachers for their children. All the mothers who sincerely love their children. Please remember the most memorable moments. What amazed you the most? What amazed me the most? That during the 3 years, we were, so to say, struggling desperately. And then, just in a couple of months, I can say that they brought my child back to me. Because our state before we met Natalia was hopeless and desperate. Because we didn't know what to do and whether it would be better. And I think all the parents come through such a stage when they feel like giving up. But now, when we are all together, when Bogdan is with us, this is such a happiness. And I would like to highlight, and Natalia also said this, that there are no ill children, there are ill parents. And I would like to wish all the parents to give me a second, I'm sorry. When a child is in such a state, he might shrink into himself because of some reason. And if he shut off himself even from his parents, then there must be something in his parents that makes a child to defend himself from. I want to sincerely wish all the parents to recover. Because if the parents recover, then their children will also recover. And I can use this example, my own example, to prove that this is 100% true. Because after Natalia, I has passed through my personal broken through. And when something inside me and inside my husband began to change, colossal changes and breaking through began to happen. Because one thing is when the child gets out of this by himself, and the other thing is when his parents help him. It is never too late just to fold your hands and to say, this is his fate. This is just his fate. This is because of the parents who don't want to work on themselves, to change themselves. They prevent their children from further development. And when I felt this, that it was because of me, of my rules, my child was suffering. I don't know. Maybe I said something wrong, but I wish everybody to recover, especially parents. This story has a great result. Bogdan's quick results were provided by that his parents began to change quickly. They changed their life views, their relationship, they revealed their feelings, they became sincere. I want to say the words of acknowledgement to the father. It was really a new karmic story and the father succeeded. Fathers, please give attention to your children, change yourselves, because it is true that you give your kids such a breakthrough. Your children get better when you're involved. And very rarely fathers get involved. Believe this, because we work this every day. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Get better. All the best.